It's a pleasure to be on the Prosperity Show. Today, we're going to be delving into what you need to do to get started, how an adventure or a venture that I had got my whole entrepreneurial juices flowing, and then what life is like to run a business in the Middle East and Asia.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we unravel the stories of incredible individuals shaping the business landscape. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today, get ready to be blown away because I've got a guest who's just not making waves, but creating tidal shifts in the talent sector. Now, Justin, how are you doing today?
Hi, Prosper. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I've been looking at the stuff that you've been doing out there, and especially the fact that you're in Dubai. I mean, a lot of people will be interested to know what it is that you are bringing to the table. And that's right, folks. We're diving into one of the most exciting episodes we've had in a while. I've just been talking to Justin behind the scenes, and he seems to be taking hit. And even though he's a little bit sore, but I know he's going to be able to solicit a few laughs here and there for us to actually learn how to do and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Now, Justin, could you maybe give us a sneak peek into your journey and what actually led you to become one of the most recognized people in regional MENA and APAC, especially in the talent sector since 2008?
Sure, of course I can, Prosper. So look, my story really starts from I grew up in the UK, and I grew up very much in pretty much in a single. My father was around till I was about 15, 16, and then was no longer around. So grew up pretty much in a single parent household, with my youngest sister, and I think really got an appetite at that age to want to work. Saw my mum was struggling financially. You know, we'd had a lot as when I was younger. All that got taken away from the recession in the early 90s, and you know, my mum was really struggling for money. So the thought of going to university, whilst it was pushed by my school, it wasn't something that was really floating my boat, so to speak. So briefly flirted with university, realized it wasn't for me, and went into the world of work, and was very fortunate that I had an interest in the advertising communications world. I don't know why, but I did. And I managed to meet a person through my mother who was starting up with what's turned into be a very successful marketing communications company. So I worked in London for 8 years, no, coming up just shy of 8 years, for a really forward-thinking business. They were involved in broadcasts, so TV and radio, and this little thing called digital that was bubbling along at the time. And I was very fortunate that I managed to get sort of into the thick of it on all aspects of the business, so that when I left, which was in 2006, late 2006, early 2007, no, sorry, late 2006, I had these digital skills behind me. Now, I decided to actually take a bit of a career break at that point because I'd moved from from school straight into work. I decided that I also wanted to see another part of the world. My father had died as well in 2003, and I don't think I really spent some time reflecting on that because it made a big impression on my life. So I joined a charity and moved to a wonderful place called Honduras in Latin America, where I taught kids English in the jungle. And I suppose really sort of had a good time of reflection about where I'd gone, what I was doing, so that when I came back to London, I got lots of offers to go back into the creative and advertising world. I spoke to lots of recruitment businesses. They actually didn't really understand what I did because I worked in digital. So really, I looked at the recruitment companies and thought, well, if you don't know what I'm doing, and most people I know who work in recruitment in London back in 2006, why don't I give this a go? And so instead of being recruited, I became the recruiter and went knocking on doors of recruitment businesses saying, look, I've worked in this thing called digital and broadcast and communications. I think there's an opportunity here for a recruitment business to work in this sector, because there really wasn't barely anyone covering it then. So fortunately, someone backed me. I managed to set up a division of their business, which was a financial services recruitment company in London. It did very well. And then when the big bad global recessions, GFC as you call it in Oz, came along, my sector, the business that I was working, was very resilient still, whereas the finance recruitment business that they were in was not. They then decided to take on my business. I decided I no longer wanted to be part of it. I didn't have the freedom to run it. I got offered a job in Dubai, and there you go. That was my journey to Dubai, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I landed here in the middle of the boomtown times, where people were becoming millionaires in 6 months, flipping property, and then that quickly disappeared. I mean, within literally 3-4 weeks, the property market crashed here, and it crashed here seismically. So that's when you had the cars being dumped at the airport. It was quite famous. There was a picture, I think, in the Sunday Times in the UK of the Burj Al Arab sinking into the sea. So I arrived at an interesting time where I saw the boom time and then the crash. But actually, once Abu Dhabi had given Dubai a lot of money and it didn't have any debts anymore, it was quickly able to rebuild and grow. And I saw, actually, even though I'd moved out here at what could be perceived as the wrong time, I was in the right place at the right time. And I set up my enterprise then. And I was the first specialist Marcoms digital recruiter in the Middle East. We grew that business very well. And then 5 years later, we opened up a business in Hong Kong. Then we opened up a business in Singapore. And most recently, we've opened up in Riyadh, where to take advantage of all the wonderful opportunities that are opening up there now. And we have an offshore team in Colombo in Sri Lanka. So things have moved on, things have changed, and I seem to be Middle East and Asia is my forte, but stayed within that Marcoms communications world because that's where I worked and that's where I recruited in London.
Fantastic. And thank you so much for taking us on that journey. You actually reminded me, because we could see what was happening in Dubai, and it's a good thing that you had front row seats to actually see the boom happening first and then the actual downfall, which obviously I'm going to, paint a picture around that because you now gave you perspective of what is actually possible. Now, Justin, just looking at how you've created your narrative and your story, it's all about opportunity and seeing the opportunity and seizing it, because none of these things have been a straight path. You've literally connected the dots looking backwards. While you were doing it, you was just, this is the next thing that I wanted to do, starting off from you just jumping out of university. Now, is it something that you would have noticed, or is it something that from reflection, you're like, oh, so many things were serendipitously happening for you to be where you are right now?
Yeah, that's a good question, Prosper. And I think to answer that, I think the honest way of looking at it is I'm quite an impulsive person. If you look at the decisions that I've made, they are, I'm not someone that sat back and as I've got older, I probably studied the analytics and thought more intensely and intently about the decisions that I make. But back in those days, from being at university for a few weeks, I knew it wasn't right. I knew I had to get out of there. I got introduced to a guy in the Marcoms world and I went for it. Boom, big decision that. I decided I wanted to leave. I remember resigning from that business. I was thinking about leaving. I made the decision one morning when I wasn't very happy in London. I felt I needed a break. Boom, I made the decision to go to Honduras. That decision to go to Honduras gave me my international, I suppose, appetite. And it made me, Honduras is quite a dangerous country. And I thought, well, if I can live there, I can live anywhere. So that made a huge impact on my life that made me think about going to Dubai and other places like Hong Kong, Singapore. Well, they seemed insignificant when you compare it to Honduras. So when I got offered the job in Dubai, boom, I went for it. I'd never even been to Dubai before, not even on holiday, absolutely never been there. But I thought, well, if I did Honduras, I can do that, no problem. So the impulsiveness is something that I've acted on, and I like to spot opportunity, but my business partner will say that sometimes he needs to rein me in on that. I do have I think you can call it shiny object syndrome. I like something new and can run with it. But as I've got older, I've learned to keep that under control, because the worst thing you can do is obviously leave a half-baked cake and move on to the next project before you finish something else as an entrepreneur.
Fantastic. And I quite like that you've got a a business partner who sort of picks up from where you leave, because then that sort of balances. You are the opportunist, the opportunity seeker, and then he then follows through and creates,
He is risk averse, and I am risky.
fantastic. I quite like that. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, there's so much that has happened, and what I'm seeing also is, really taking yourself out of your comfort zone. Had you not, jumped onto the, trip to Honduras, this Dubai stint would not have, emanated and things of that nature. Now, the question here is, how important is it for one to actually jump out of their comfort zone? Because so many people would rather sit around the people they know, date their high school sweetheart, and never really venture outside of their postcode of which they were born.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Prosper. Look, I live by the mantra that when I'm old, grey, and look back and reflect, I don't want to have regrets. I don't want to have that feeling inside me that says, I wish I could have done that. And why did, when you're old, you can't have the ability to press the rewind button. And I always want to feel that I've given something my best shot. If I think there's an opportunity, I want to run with it. And I live by that mantra. I don't want to have any regrets. So yeah, even you can look back and say some of the decisions that I've made, they've not always been successful at all. But as we all know, we have to fail to succeed, right? And I'm not afraid of failure. I think if you're going to pursue a life where you don't want to have any regrets, where you want to see the world, take as many opportunities as you can of the vast. I mean, where we are living in the perfect time to be an entrepreneur right now. The online is just opening up so endless doors, right? You can run a service business and give you a wonderful cash flow business. You can experience all these great places in the world. What a time to be alive. So if I would just feel that I'd be letting myself down if I didn't make the most of that. And I think when you go back to my background, and when you go back to the fact that I saw my mum, pigeonholed into that small house and not being able to, to sometimes have enough money to feed us. Well, you know what? I don't want to live like that. And so this has been I suppose, my fuel that's always driven me forward throughout my life.
Fantastic. I quite like that, because so many people may not be exposed to, life situations like the ones that you were exposed to. And maybe the biggest thing that would have happened in their life is maybe the pandemic in the last couple of years, and they haven't had to experience life like you actually did. So you've gone from this single parent family to building a global business. Now, how has maybe your personal background influence the way that you actually start approaching work and the people that you serve? Because so many things that have happened are very, very unique and particular to you and your situation.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people. So my background, obviously, and I think just to touch on something and go back a little bit further, I was born in America and I grew up in Spain because of my dad's work, right? So I've always had this passport with place of birth Los Angeles written in, and in some weird way, shape, or form, I think it's made me a bit of an adventurer, right? And I think because I had that experience as a young boy of living in different places, I think it did open my eyes. And I can only say that now as a middle-aged man, look back and reflect and think, what really catapulted me to make those international leaps? And I think from a young age, because I'd experienced being in new countries, I think that gave me the guts to probably do it. Now, what I will say is, and the interesting thing is, these days, if you tell someone you have a business in Dubai, people go, oh, wow, like, what a great place to be. That's really exciting. That's it. 15 years ago, or however long it was when I went to Dubai, 15, 16 years ago, everyone thought I was mad, right? When I told people that I was going to go take a job in Dubai, and then when I told them I was going to open a business in Dubai, no one could understand it. Honestly, no one. Everyone thought I was mad. Most people thought I would fail. Whenever I went back to the UK, all people would ask me is, when are you coming home? Fast forward to today, where the perception of Dubai and perception of other, Hong Kong, Singapore, etc., is very different. people don't question the decision. They sort of look at me as if I'm, as if I know what I'm talking about. In fact, a lot of people I know, friends, etc., they ask me if I can help them find a job. So what I would say from that is, don't listen to the people the doubters. Go with what you feel is right, because that decision, and having not, if I'd have listened to everyone, I would not be in the position I am now. And so that adventuring spirit and that degree of stubbornness and self-belief has served me very, very well.
Fantastic. I actually blame Hollywood for that, Justin. All right. It's because Hollywood presents a picture where, oh, it's Netflix these days, or whoever's in charge of the TV. See, they present a situation where you grow up, go to kinder, go to high school, go to university, marry your high school sweetheart, get a job, die, all in the space of 35 minutes plus commercials. So many people haven't ventured as much as they have, and like you have, and it's not their fault to just think that where they are is where opportunity and they everything else that they want in life can possibly be at. So I can only imagine, because the whole of Dubai, like you said, was just built while you're actually watching. So at the end of the day, so many people haven't seen that. They've only seen what the press wants them to watch or what Hollywood presents. So yeah.
That's a really good point. And I think I was talking to actually our chairman yesterday over WhatsApp, and I saw a quote, and I thought this really sums up like the mentality that an entrepreneur has to have. But also, I think the big thing, the take home that I've seen as an employer that maybe the younger generation now aren't quite clued up on. And it was an Alex Hormozi quote. I don't know if you know Alex Hormozi. And he said, it always takes longer and costs more than you think it will. And now think about that, right? It always takes longer and costs more than you think it will. It takes longer to build an empire than a hut. So don't expect an empire on a hut timeline. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic, right? And that sums out what I've had to do as a business owner coming to the Middle East, because it has not been easy whatsoever. When I came out here, first of all, it was, you had to go into business with a local. It was a 51% ownership with them. Then you had to go to courts and sign that percentage away. As someone that's never been here before, you're like, whoa, I'm opening a business. It's costing a lot of money. And then I'm having to give everything over to this local who I don't know. So that, endless paperwork, opening a bank account. Honestly, it could break you. Apartments here, you had to pay in one check in those days. So you had to take, there was no monthly rental payments. Like, if you're going to do it, you've got to go. If you succeed, you'll go big. If you fail, you'll go down hard. It's really quite tough. Opening up a business in Hong Kong, it was the red tape there, the jurisdictions, it's on one side, it's one of the most forward-thinking cities in the world. On the other hand, it's like going back into the 1970s. So these are all things you need to understand. It could break many people just at the setting up stage. I've just opened a business in Riyadh. Prosper, it took me 13 months to do that, right? Now we've got first mover advantage there, because not a lot of people want to spend the amount we've spent, or actually just want to go through the red tape to do it. And that's the thing. I think if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, if you're going to be successful as a business person, you need to have incredible patience and stamina. Okay. And that's something that people don't teach you. You don't become successful overnight. And those that do become successful overnight, quite often, I know a few people that have become successful overnight. They're not very happy. They don't feel very deserving of what they've achieved. Whereas I still sometimes feel like I'm only getting started, which is perhaps another common entrepreneurial trait, that the engines aren't really fired yet. Maybe I'll be feeling like that when I am in my 60s or 70s, but I think I'll live a longer life and a happy, charged life as a result.
Absolutely. You see, if you're doing what you love, it seldom feels like work. So you opening up in London, Dubai, and now congratulations in Riyadh. Riyadh, yeah.
Riyadh, in
Riyadh.
Saudi,
yeah, Riyadh and Hong Kong and Singapore and things of that nature. Not a lot of people would actually want that. And as you say, what was the thing that people were complaining about when the United Arab Emirates was hosting the World Cup? There's no beer. And you can only imagine that line of thinking. You know what I mean?
That was Qatar, but yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, look, they're all obviously alcohol in the UAE it's pretty liberal. In Qatar, they are opening up. There was an announcement recently on Saudi that they're going to open a first alcohol store since the 1950s is opening up. So look, things are changing and modernizing for sure out here. I think what having a business in this part of the world has really opened my eyes to, and something that that I'm really enjoying teaching my staff. And I'm very vocal on LinkedIn. That's how we met each other. I'm very vocal in sharing our journey, because I think this is something that other entrepreneurs can learn as well. Is you might wonder why I've got a business in Colombo in Sri Lanka. That seems quite an interesting pin to have in the map of the world versus the other places I've got. And one of the reasons for that, Prosper, is that I think in a post-COVID world, geographical location of a lot of your staff is very irrelevant. And I think what I've discovered is the offshoring and virtual assistants, the benefits that can bring to a business as well. Now, the reason I've had to look at this is because I've got businesses in places that are very expensive. So if you think about where I've set up, Hong Kong and Singapore, often number 1 and number 2 most expensive cities in the world. Dubai has now entered the top 10. I can tell you now, Saudi will be there as well. So not only is it expensive to have talent, but secondly, in places like Saudi or places like Singapore, they have very strong nationalization, i.e., if you want to scale your business, you have to do it through locals. Very hard to do. And what your clients want is they just want the product as fast and as possible with the best people. So I saw that the benefits of having an offshore company enables you to plug into a region, put on a team. That team doesn't necessarily have to be there in large footprint geographically. You can have a smaller footprint there, but you can do decisive work, and you can work as quickly and diligently as another business that might be full or have everyone in the city. So for me, it's been very cost effective as well. Let's make no bones about it. Having a business in Sri Lanka is cost effective. It makes the business more profitable. It's plugged in time zone wise to the Middle East and Asia very well. There's actually a lot of offshoring Australian companies in Sri Lanka, I noticed when I was there. And the quality of English, the quality of work and everything is fantastic. So that's another thing that I've been exploring and opening up, the value of having a good outsourced team.
Oh, absolutely. Team is everything else. I mean, you can't climb the ladder of success with your hands full. And especially, I just noticed one of the jobs that you've got on your website is going for 50,000 AED, which translates to about 20 or 30,000 Australian.
That's per month.
And that's per month. And I'm just thinking how expensive that hire would be. And if that is, who you guys need to be working with. So obviously you making a very sound business decision right there. And I like the fact that you've spoken that geography is no longer, a factor when it comes to business. I mean, at the end of the day, with your offices in London, in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Singapore, maybe you can shed some light or share some uncommon processes that you are using to actually grow your business in such diverse territories, because each and every one of them is completely different to the other, and you have to actually make sure that you're compliant in all these areas, and also connecting with the locals and connecting with the business that you're conducting in those areas.
Yeah, so we have, as a recruitment business, probably not an ordinary setup. So I call it the factory model. Now, what the factory model is if you think about if you go back to how Ford cars were built, right? They were back in the day when the Henry Ford first thought of building a car. There was about 5 or 6 technicians he had that built the cars, right? So if one of them got sick, well, then his car production fell off the roof. So basically what happened was he developed specialists, so windscreen specialists, tire specialists, engine specialists, and then a whole army of people put together these cars. In recruitment, it was the old model, the model that we used to be, is you had one person that found the candidates, found the clients, okay, then did all the work, did all the recruiting, and then delivered everything on a plate. What you had was you had a business that yo-yoed. So you had one point you had lots of clients, then you worked hard on all their jobs, then you didn't have any clients anymore. Then you worked hard on all their jobs, then you didn't have any clients anymore. So a yo-yo business. What I've created is a delivery function in Sri Lanka. So that team are always finding people. a customer service team. So they are on the ground in Dubai, Riyadh, Hong Kong, and Singapore, and they're meeting customers. They're talking to them. They're making sure that the jobs that we're working on, they're very happy that they're account managing them. Then we have a business development team. Well, it's probably quite obvious what the business development team does. It's finding new clients. Then we have a marketing function that's constantly promoting what we do, trying to find new clients, obviously, putting out there our salary surveys, our country guides, our what life is like, our commentary, promoting, personal brand, etc. for our staff. That all works together in a system where the BD and marketing team are bringing new clients through, the account management team are looking after them, and then the resource team in Sri Lanka are finding the candidates.
Fantastic. And I think all of this really does sound like a well-oiled machine, because Henry Ford, like you gave as an example, was one of the first people to actually create the production line. So I mean, good on you for productizing and finding different sectors within your business that could actually like you said, work like a factory. Now I'm still hung up on you being in Honduras, and I think for me, this is one of those places where, because Honduras is one of the poorest countries in America, and it's got one of the world's largest murder rates, known to men and things of that nature. But you were there teaching the people English, and things like that. Now, first of all, were you not scared that this was happening around you, like, moving forward?
Prosper, I think, as I mentioned before, I'm quite an impulsive person, right? So when I decided to resign and from my career in London and go and do that year in Honduras, because I grew up in Spain, I had quite a good Spanish. I can hold my own reasonably well in Spanish. So it was always going to be a Spanish-speaking country I was going to go to. And then the charity that I aligned to work with was called ICYE. Intercultural Youth Exchange. It's a UN affiliated charity, and the options I had were, I think it was Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, it might be Mexico and Honduras. And I thought, well, I'd never heard of Honduras. This is my detailed research here. I thought, I've never heard of Honduras. You know what? And I saw it had some nice Caribbean islands. All right, I'm going to go with that. Yeah. So there you go. That was the extent of my research. And obviously, when I then signed up and it got closer to the time, my mum and aunt managed to find a bit more information about Honduras and its murder rate. So a few questions were asked about safety. I was given reassurance, and I just went with it. And you know what? Look, it is incredibly dangerous, but as with anywhere, I'm sure in Zimbabwe it's the same. That if you go to the wrong parts of town, look, you're going to run into trouble. But most people are good people, right? Most people aren't in gangs or drug lords. Yes, Honduras is on the drug route. There is no denying that. It does have that whole stretch in Central America does have issues with the drug trade. But most people I met were lovely, incredibly hospitable. Because I was one of the few there to help. And because there's quite a few people frog leap Honduras because of it, it's a dangerous country. I found most people to be incredibly hospitable, so down to earth. The country is stunning, and again, because it's not on the tourist trek so much, it's relatively untouched. So I saw some of the most beautiful things you can ever see. It's on the Pacific coast and the Caribbean coast, and it has 3 Caribbean islands. I learned to become a diver there at an advanced level. I taught wonderful kids English. I actually asked my wife to marry me. I took her back to Honduras and asked her to marry me there in 2011, because that's how much the country meant to me. It's only this weekend in Dubai, believe it or not, someone from Honduras who I knew, who's now in the coffee market and selling Honduran coffee, was here in Dubai, and I got to meet her for a drink. So, it's just fabulous that I've had that connection in life.
Fantastic, man. I want to tell you a story about what you just did and what you did in the past. So, when I was 13, a student teacher from Australia came to visit our little village in Africa. And from then on, that sparked the interest that I could be to and have a happier existence in a place where I could, be. So she was a maths teacher. And you can imagine, as a 13-year-old boy, maths is one of the most difficult subjects, but it was being taught by a woman, and it was being, and hormones were acting at that particular time. So I literally started studying a great deal just so I could be picked on in class and get an opportunity to speak with this teacher. So, and from then on, when she was leaving, she told every one of us that if ever any of you guys are in Australia, yeah, you should come around for a cuppa. And I literally took that as a challenge, and
Yeah.
and as soon as I came to Australia, I looked her up, and we had this really beautiful reunion. So you would have maybe impacted so many people without you realizing, and for what you went and did and risked your life, I thank you, my man.
Oh, thanks. That's very kind of you to say. And actually, I'll tell you, so when we started to grow the business, I actually brought over one of the guys from Honduras to who was working with us and actually that person today has got a very successful career in Singapore, and two kids and lives a lovely life there. So it's nice to feel the impact that it made down the line. But I didn't do it for that reason. I'll be honest. I wanted to, you can look back on that now and reflect and say, wow, that happened. But at the time, there was some selfish reasons why I did it. And then everything that happened beyond that was just magical. And I think the unexpected was what made it so magical. I think I underestimated the impact it would have on other people's lives, me being there. I think I underestimated the impact that no one knew where the UK was. Everyone called me gringo. Everyone thought I was American, right? So I think I just underestimated everything. And when you underestimate something, it makes it that more magical because it's all a surprise, right? And I took so much from it that it still has, it still gives me goosebumps today when I talk about it.
Fantastic. For me, that's the reason why I create these shows, because you never know which guest I'm going to bring on that is going to spark that something on another person. So it's just my way of sending the elevator down. Now, Justin, what would be the best way that people can get a hold of you?
Well, LinkedIn's always a good one. So Justin McGuire. And anytime anyone wants to drop me an email, ask about what it's like to set up a business in the Middle East, or any tips, etc., in what it's like to have a business in Singapore or Hong Kong. I know there's a lot of I've got a lot of Australian mates with businesses in Singapore. So and also what it's like to have an offshoring team in Sri Lanka. I'm happy to share, happy to help. And my email is justin@mcgtalent.io.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes below. Now, Justin, another thing again, I mean, obviously, when people have done stuff, because your life story and your experience have so much value, that can be unpacked. Would you say, all right, because when we were growing up, when you get to the age of, say, 16 or between 13 and 16, you were proverbially called in by the village elders, and then they would tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's your turn to lead, right? And then you'd be brought in with other boys from that sort of age group, and then you start getting taught, life lessons and things of that nature, which is somewhat of a rite of passage, and, you now, from that point, it sort of breaks your pattern. You're no longer a kid, you're now acting as an adult. So you now go forth and do what adults do. And you can now also be involved in adult conversations and things of that nature, right? And I've sort of noticed that in the first world, there's not that, except maybe in the Spanish sort of community where you have the quinceanera, and then maybe the Jewish have a bar mitzvah and things of that nature. But in the other side of the world, there's not that break, which then opens this whole big problem that a lot of people have from childhood to adulthood, and they're just not knowing what their next move is, how they should act, and they're just waiting for somebody to sort of let them know. Now, there's a lot of questions here. The first one will be your trip to Honduras. Would you maybe classify that as a rite of passage that then really set you up as somebody who now knew what his direction was, had a calling, yielded to it, and now you're creating this massive impact for other people, across the world?
I think my trip to Honduras made me a lot more accepting of me as an individual. And I don't want to sound that a bit woo-woo or anything, but I think I became, I think having worked in London and gone from home straight into work, I took little time to think about me, who I was, what I wanted, and where I wanted my career to go, and how, and I think when I came back, I was not afraid to set the scene of what is clear my entrepreneurial path, and it gave me the bravery. I was a lot more fearless when I came back, and whereas before I was perhaps petrified of failure, I was not afraid of it. And I think that was because when you experience something like that, when you go, well, what could go wrong? When I reflect on what could have gone wrong in Honduras, it could have been very bad. I mean, I had a gun put to my head in there, etc. You come back and you're not really as afraid, and that made a big impact on my life. Yeah.
Fantastic. And obviously, you did mention right at the start that your father has since sort of moved on. If he would see, or he would be on the next flight to Dubai right now to come and visit you and have a chat, what do you think he would say about the person you've become?
Well, naturally, I often think about that because I'm coming up to the age he was when he passed away now as well, which I find quite bizarre. And all my memories of when he's younger than I am now. So I would hope that he'd be very proud of the journey I've taken. I think my mother and my aunt and my grandparents, when they were around, they used to say, I don't quite know how you've become the person that you are. And I would always take that as a compliment, because it was quite a tricky place to grow up. And I think a lot of people presume you're going to sink. And I decided that was not going to be my destiny whatsoever. So hopefully he'll be very proud.
Fantastic. And yeah, I'm thinking so too, because you had this appetite ever since you were a kid, and it's completely different to the story that you have around your dad. But at the time you left university and you thought, this is not my thing for me, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be, considering the journey that you've now undertaken and where you are today?
Yeah, I'm not going to force my children to, if they don't want to go to higher education, they don't have to. I think in this day and age, I think the education system as it is, and there's been lots of commentary on this, I think to a degree it sets you up in some ways for life, but in many ways it doesn't. And the working world right now is a weird and wonderful place that changes so rapidly and so quickly. And actually, me being in the world of work before many of my friends when they came out of university, and I look back on it now, I was really had an advantage. The university of life really did serve me very well. And I think in the digital age where technology is just making such impact into, what AI was essentially introduced into the world in the past 18 months, there's nothing really about that in school. It doesn't set you up for what you're going into. So I will be very open to helping my kids and supportive of going to do whatever they want, be it in any sector. I think forcing people into something as a late teenager, early adult is not the way to go. And fortunately, my mum was actually, she was not one of those parents that forced me to go into anything. If I'd have just said to her, "This is what I want to do, Mum," she'd have gone, "Oh, that sounds great. I think you'd be brilliant at it." And she, for that reason, I always knew that I wasn't going to have any resistance from her, that I could go with it. And I thought, as long as I give it my best shot, I know she's got my back. And I want to give that to my kids as well.
It's very important to have people that are around you supporting you and things of that nature, right? Because obviously, if people are going to be thwarting you or expecting you to leave their own dreams and expectations, then it's just going to be, a burden in the future. And look at you now. Now, what can those that are now intrigued about your journey and your life expect in the future from Justin?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So obviously I've had my recruitment business now for a number of years. It's in its 14th year. I've really want to dedicate this year to, which may sound weird if people hear me say this, given I've got a number of years work experience of learning. I'm learning how to become the best mentor I can be. And I want to then help others on their entrepreneurial path. This year, I'm committed to packaging and bottling up everything that I've learned from having businesses in these wonderful places, and then assisting others who may want to participate in a similar journey, help those that have believe that they've got something to offer the world, but and don't quite know how to get started. Hopefully I can give them some the passion and emphasis to do that. So I'm very keen on learning and mentoring and sharing that with the world this year. I'm also looking out for opportunities to invest in. I think I've had two reasonably successful exits in my time as a business person. One with my wife's technology company, which was sold last year, and the second was with a learning and development company that I set up a few years ago that I exited from. So I'm always on the lookout for interesting opportunities. And I think from a family perspective, I think one of the goals I always have is, I think when you're as busy as I am and when you travel as much, is to be as present as I can with my kids. I think that is a real mission that I have to. They're only this age once, and I feel terribly guilty if I don't. If they don't feel that their dad is part of their life, you know. So I want to always make sure that that is on the top of my agenda as well.
Fantastic. And who wouldn't, you know, aspire to have health, wealth, and relationships all intact? And yeah, I feel like you owe us a book, you know, the McGuire method. You know, how to escape, you know, the treacherous streets of Honduras and settle in Dubai. You know, I always envy when I see people driving their cars in Dubai. It's like if you are driving a Toyota in Dubai, people might just look at you and call the cops on you because it's you're making the streets dirty. All right. And yeah, I'm really appreciative of the time that we've spent today. And I hope the next time we have a chat, we'll be launching the book, because you now want to mentor people. And I think a book is one of those things that, you know, would leverage your time. And yeah, we could, you know, talk about it in an episode that will be you know, directed at those that want to grow and learn from you.
Well, Prosper, I probably should mention it. I spoke to a publisher last week, actually. So, but that is potentially something that's coming down the track. And just on your point on the cars in Dubai, I think if you did have a Toyota and someone that called the police, to make matters worse, the police here drive McLarens and Ferraris. So, so if they turned up in one of those, it would be a true crime.
Absolutely. And there you have it, folks. A journey filled with resilience, innovation, and a touch of humor from Justin himself. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling really inspired already. And remember, if you want to relive this episode and catch up on more insightful conversations, don't forget to hit that replay button and also subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for a regular dose of inspiration and success stories. Now, I will be putting all that information that Justin has given us in the show notes so that you can link up with him on LinkedIn, or you know, just follow his journey, you know, as he conquers the world. We never know where he's going to be next. All right, as you have noticed. But Justin, thank you once again, my man. I mean, obviously, you know, you really brought in a different perspective on how to actually be, do, and have and create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. So thank you so much, my man.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching, until next time, just keep thriving. And always remember, prosperity actually awaits those who dare to chase it. Just like Justin, he didn't settle for what was handed to him. He just kept searching. And that's when you actually would have a good story to tell, you know, because you can only connect the dots looking, you know, backwards. You can't do it as you are living the life. So this has been Prosper and Justin. We're signing off. Stay prosperous. Bye for now.